Tēnā koutou, te whānau o Auckland Unitarian. Tēnā koutou, ngā manuhiri, nau mai, haere mai. Ki tenei whare karakia o te atua. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou, katoa. We welcome you into this space made sacred by Auckland Unitarians for 119 years. I'm John DiLeo, one of the congregation's worship associates, and it is my honor to lead this morning's service. The words of welcome I'm using today are by Monica Jacobson Tennyson. Welcome. What you bring, who you are, enriches us all. We say welcome to your joy, your hope, your pride. We say welcome to your grief, your fear, your anger. And the parts of you that are not yet ready to be seen and heard, welcome to them as well. We are people of faith, faith in our expansive welcome, faith in our ability to grow, faith in the precious gift of our truths, faith in the promise of trying, learning, changing, faith in our capacity to know ourselves and each other ever deeply. Welcome to you who are gay, straight, bi, pan, lesbian, queer, questioning, unable to be contained in any word. Welcome to you who are trans, cis, genderqueer, non-binary, intersex, agender, beyond words. Welcome to you who are human. Welcome to you who love and are loved. Welcome to you who are blessed, which is all of you. May this time together be a blessing. I want to extend a special welcome to those who are viewing this service on YouTube, either as part of the live stream this morning or the recording afterward. After the service concludes, let those of us here in person join together for morning tea. It is our sacrament of hospitality. Please join us. It won't be complete without you. We are not alone. We are this flame, ancient as the stars, new as the vulnerable spark. We are not alone. We are this chalice, rimmed by the spiral dance of searching. We are not alone. We are the light soaring, the shadow deepening, the dance between them. We are not alone. We are the heirs of the tribes and their fires, the healers and their circles. We are not alone. We are here. We are here for ourselves. We are here for each other. And we are not alone. Please join me in reciting the covenant of our church, which can be found in your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is the sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each other and with our God. Please now stand if able and join in singing Spirit of Life. Now I invite others to come forward, light a candle, and share your joys and concerns with us, or simply come forward and light a candle in silence.
Good morning, I'm Alex. We have 2 birthdays in our congregation, 2 that I know of, maybe some more. This candle is for Corinne, who's had a birthday this week. And this one is for Jenny, who also has a birthday. Is it today or tomorrow? Thursday. You're today, tomorrow. I'll get it right 1 year, you know. Yeah.
One more time.
Kia ora, I'm Rachel,
I'm Clay.
and we're lighting a candle of joy because this is the 366th day, because it was a leap year last year, of our marriage. Tomorrow's our wedding anniversary.
Hi, I'm Isabel. I'm lighting a candle of joy because tomorrow I start my one-year teaching course to become a primary school teacher.
And I light this candle to commemorate those other joys and concerns which we hold in our hearts, but which are left unsaid. Now, this is the third Sunday of the month, which is traditionally a time when we welcome the Peace and Social Justice Committee to give us an update. Does anyone have an update for us this month? Okay, then we'll proceed. Now, the Koha hymn that I've chosen is one that has not been sung here very often, so we're going to ask Frank to play through it one time first before we begin. Please stand if able and join in singing our Koha hymn number 343. This morning, I've chosen as my reading The World Wide Web and the Web of Life by Sir Tim Berners-Lee. If you're not familiar with the name, Berners-Lee created the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, HTTP, and is considered the father of the modern web. He wrote this piece in 1998, and it can still be found on the website of the World Wide Web Consortium, of which he continues as director today. People have often asked me whether the web's design was influenced by Unitarian Universalist philosophy. I have to say that it wasn't explicitly, as I developed the web well before I became a Unitarian Universalist at all. But looking back on it, I suppose that there are some parallels between the philosophies. Like many people, I had a religious upbringing which I rejected as a teenager. In my case, it was a Protestant Christian Church of England upbringing. I rejected it just after being confirmed and was told how essential it was to believe in all kinds of unbelievable things. Since then, I have discovered that many of the people around me who were Christians, in fact, used a sort of loose interpretation of some of that stuff. But it relieved a great tension just to say no. In fact, confirmation is when you say yes, and, well, we all make mistakes. In fact, the need for the basis for Christian philosophy, but without the dogma, was a vacuum for many years. If you're used to other religions, you might be confused by UUism being called a religion, but it qualifies, I think. Like many people, I came back to religion when we had children. Why does everybody do this? Is it just that one feels that values and things are important for kids, though one wouldn't have time for it otherwise? I hope not. Or is it that having kids is such a direct, strong, stark experience that it brings thoughts of life and love again bubbling up through the turgid morass which otherwise clogs our thinking? Or is it that it gives us an excuse? But for whatever happenstance had our family living in the Boston area where UU churches abound, and we were lucky enough to hit on a great one with a great minister. Unitarian Universalists are people who are concerned about all the things which your favorite religion is concerned about, but allow or even require their belief to be compatible with reason. They are hugely tolerant and decidedly liberal. The fundamental value and dignity of every human being is a core philosophy, and they have a healthy respect for those whose beliefs differ. They meet in churches instead of wired hotels and discuss justice, peace, conflict, and morality rather than protocols and data formats. But in other ways, the peer respect is very similar to that of the Internet Engineering Task Force. Both are communities which I really appreciate. At this point in his essay, Berners-Lee includes links to the Unitarian Universalist Associations and the Internet Engineering Task Force's websites. I won't be following either of those links here. And in fact, when you look at the way Unitarians feel society works and the way a lot of the internet and the web works, it might be fun to draw some comparisons. Let's take this all with a pinch of salt. People, after all, are people, and machines are machines. Unitarians do not have a pure respect for machines, but let's do it as an exercise. First, decentralization. The internet community always used to be as decentralized as the internet itself. News groups have no central server and no central authority to determine what is or isn't a new group. When I was developing the web in 1990, the internet development community was largely academic in membership and had a very academic style. People were and are judged on what they say rather than who they are. As Dave Clark said, we have no kings or presidents. We believe in rough consensus and running code. There is very little structure. There is the idea that society can run without a hierarchical, bureaucratic government being involved at every step, if only we can hit on the right set of rules for peer-to-peer interaction. So where the design of the internet and the web is a search for a set of rules which allow computers to work together in harmony, so our spiritual and social quest is for a set of rules which allow people to work together in harmony. It used to be the case that internet protocols were designed with some clear vision of the final harmonious internet working in mind, whereas laws and rules of behavior tended to be put together without a clear common understanding of what tomorrow's world would look like. Nowadays, even web developments happen because of our gut feeling that certain properties of the web will lead to great things. But we often expect the results to be amazing and good, but unpredictable. Tolerance. In this decentralized world, the first common principle is of tolerance. The general principle struck me very strongly when I was logging onto the mainframe system at CERN. That's the European Organization for Nuclear Research, many years ago, before CERN had internet working. In those days, terminals were all connected to terminal concentrators, which would switch you, if you were lucky, to a free port on the hallowed mainframe. If there wasn't a free port, it would place you in a queue. You could wait typically 35 minutes, and then it would suddenly ask whether you were still there. You had a few seconds in which to hit a key and be connected, and if you missed it, you would be dropped from the queue. This ratio of 35 minutes to 20 seconds, I called the tolerance ratio, or in that case, the intolerance ratio. It was some indication that the system considered its time about 100 times more valuable than yours. The market pressure for terminal lines had increased their value to the level that to deserve one, you had to nervously hover over a silent terminal waiting for that special moment. It makes you think about your own tolerance ratio. How much are you prepared to go out of your way compared with the extent you require others to go out of theirs? I don't know who formulated the principle of tolerance in internet circles first as be conservative in what you do and liberal in what you expect. I have heard Vint Cerf quote it. It is a guiding rule in internet protocol design. Always say, for example, HTTP in lowercase, but in practice understand HTTP all uppercase too. Unitarian Universalism is famous for its tolerance. UU people don't generally go around trying to convert other people. They respect those who believe in some sort of a God different from theirs, if they even use the term. Recently, I heard a UU remark. I paraphrase from memory. It wasn't written down. I have always been an argumentative type, always tending to play devil's advocate and be skeptical of everything. I was quite expecting to be thrown out of this church like I've been thrown out of everywhere else. I was staggered to be accepted. I was even more surprised to find that, in fact, the place is full of people just as argumentative as me. UUs perhaps share the view that if there is one thing I can't stand, it's intolerance. They fight racism and inequality. They get really upset when people are killed and tortured because they don't believe in the one true God or the one true anything. UUs actually believe in love, but that doesn't seem to bear analogy with computers. Oh well. The test of independent invention. There's a test I use for technology which the consortium is thinking of adopting, and I'll call it the independent invention test. Just suppose that someone had invented exactly the same system somewhere else, but made all the arbitrary decisions differently. Suppose after many years of development and adoption, the two systems came together. Would they work together? Take the web. I tried to make it pass this test. Suppose someone had, and quite likely someone had, invented a World Wide Web system somewhere else with the same principles. Suppose they called it the multimedia mesh, or MMM, and based it on media resource identifiers, the multimedia transport protocol, and a multimedia markup language. After a few years, the web and the mesh meet. What's the damage? A huge battle involving abandonment of projects, conversion or loss of data, division of the world by a border commission into two separate communities, or smooth integration with only incremental effort. Obviously, we're looking for the latter option. Fortunately, we could immediately extend universal resource identifiers to include MMTP and extend MRIs to include HTTP. We could make gateways, and on the better browsers, immediately configure them to go through a gateway when finding a URI of the new type. The URI space is universal. It covers all addresses of all accessible objects, but it does not have to be the only universal space. Universal, but not unique. Imagine a virtue and veracity, or VV, church growing up independently with the same UU principles, but none of the same history or vocabulary. What would happen when one of the VV members strolled by accident into a UU church? An enlightened smile of recognition. The same warm feeling which someone who has really unknowingly been a UU all their life feels when walking into a congregation of UUs. It's not the same when the followers of Divine Prophet 1 meet followers of Divine Prophet 2. Divine prophets know who they are and know they are the only ones. The one true churches worship their one true gods, and in many cases convince others of their oneness and trueness with swords and fire and destruction. Those philosophies fail the test of independent invention. The result of this interoperability failure is not an error code or an unreadable web page, but hatred and jealousy, war and persecution. Don't get me wrong, I believe that much of the philosophy of life associated with many religions is much more sound than the dogma which comes along with it. So I do respect them, and you, if you belong to one. UUism has looked for its philosophy to contributions and writings from many religions, Western and Eastern. A lot of people ask me whether I am disappointed that the web has taken on such a lot of commercial material rather than being a pure academic space. In fact, I know it could not be universal if it did not allow any form of communication. It must be able to represent any thought, any datum, any idea that one might have. So in this way, the web and the UU concept of faith are similar in that both serve as a place for thought and the importance of the quest for truth, but without labeling any one true solution. The quest for truth is always accompanied by skepticism of anyone claiming to have found it. Sorry, that was a bit long. I have a feeling that we're going to run a little longer today than usual because I haven't even started on my own musings. When I found that piece and I was like, oh, Tim Berners-Lee is a UU? That's so cool. But of course, that's nerd worship because, the father of the modern web. Ooh. And if you don't care about that, well, trust me, it's pretty cool. Now on to my musings. Today I'm going to spend some time talking mostly about myself. These musings put me in mind of the Talking Heads song lyric, and I think to myself, well, how did I get here? Today, as I stand before you, I'm comfortable calling myself a UU Sceptic. Even just a couple of years ago, that wasn't the case. I was born into a non-practicing Christian family. My father, the youngest of 14 children in an Italian immigrant family in Jersey City, New Jersey, had been raised Roman Catholic and was active in the church through his teens. He was excommunicated at 21 for choosing to marry my mother, a non-Catholic, after he had been forbidden to do so by his family and their parish priest. My mother was descended from English, Irish, and German immigrant lines and grew up in the Episcopal Church, also in Jersey City. She was the third of 11 children, and interestingly, was not the only daughter to end up marrying a Catholic boy. For reasons I never thought to ask about, my parents were married in a nearby United Methodist church, rather than my mother's home church. From then until I was about 10 years old, my family was largely unchurched. All three of my siblings were baptized at that same United Methodist church in Jersey City. When I was born many years later, the family had moved to Eastern Connecticut, so I was baptized at the local United Methodist church there. Side note, my brother eventually became a United Methodist minister, served as the pastor of that very church, and presided over my mother's funeral there. Throughout my early childhood, church was just not part of my life. Occasionally, I would go to church with a friend or relative. I would be sent off to Sunday school class where miraculous Bible stories were recited as plain fact, and everyone accepted their truth and authority without question. Although I never professed any sort of faith, I also considered the existence of the Christian's God and the truth of the Bible to be fact, because everyone around me did. When I was 11, I started attending a local Episcopal church. I began serving as an acolyte, in other churches, an altar boy, which I continued through high school and college. As an adult, I became an active churchman, elected to serve on my parish's vestry, the management committee, and even getting elected to the diocesan council, which is very roughly equivalent to the NZUA board. In fact, I was so into serving in the church that I applied to enter a 3-year training program leading to ordination as a permanent deacon. I wasn't accepted into that program. In retrospect, I think the selection committee could see something I hadn't realized myself. You might have noticed I never said anything about my faith because I didn't have one. I loved all the things I was doing in the church and the pomp and ceremony it often entailed, but the church's beliefs and doctrines were never something that I came to believe. I accepted them, but I never believed them. As part of the collateral damage from the breakup of my first marriage, I walked away from all of those roles and went back to being unchurched. The next 14 years were punctuated by a short stint at one UU fellowship in the US, but even that failed to take. I couldn't bring myself to become a UU officially. In retrospect, I've realized I couldn't bring myself to declare affiliation with a group that says it's okay to be a non-believer, even though I already knew I was a non-believer. Then, just as Berners-Lee mentioned in his essay, my attitude changed when Tess became pregnant with our first child. She had returned to full activity in the LDS church in which she had been raised and expressed her intention to raise our children in that faith. I decided it would be good for my family if I joined the church so we could cooperate in that upbringing. So I did. I met with the missionaries, let them teach me all the things that new members needed to know and believe, and was baptized and confirmed in the LDS church. Now, if you're not familiar with it, the origins and history of the LDS church, and in particular around the life and death of its founder, Joseph Smith, include a great many fantastical stories. Among them, a fair few that have been objectively disproven. For me, that wasn't much of an issue. I had chosen to accept the doctrine and beliefs of the church, even though I would never believe them. As part of my appointed calling in the church, I actually ended up teaching new and prospective members many of the same fantastical things I'd been taught. It was difficult, but not impossible, to reconcile my status as a non-believer, coupled with my core belief in honesty and integrity, with my role in teaching others church doctrine. I did it with weasel words. The church teaches that, or this story tells us that, while being very careful never to say, we know that, or I believe that. Eventually, being a practicing non-believer wore on me, though. Partly because there was a continual fear that I'd be found out, called out, and forced to get real or get out. But also partly because many of the believers with whom I had to interact were truly horrible human beings, making no effort to conceal decidedly non-Christian attitudes toward others, both within and outside the church. In a few instances, local leaders even professed as church doctrine beliefs that went directly against the church's actual teachings, not to mention common sense. Just when I couldn't stand being a part of it any longer and was seriously contemplating a very loud and colorful exit, Tess reached her own breaking point for other reasons, and we walked away together. Now, looking back on all that, I've realized that my persistent non-belief has a lot to do with my being a critical thinker and a skeptic. In other words, being smart enough to know better. Full disclosure, though, there were points in my life when I had profound and joyous spiritual experiences. Those experiences came close to igniting a spark of faith in me, but it never took. Inevitably, my desire to believe would run into some roadblock erected by my rational mind. I would raise one of those pesky, yeah, but what about questions to my then current religious leader, and they would tell me I just needed to have more faith. Yeah, nah, that just never worked for me. But at the same time, it's been hard to erase my early programming. Despite our not being religious, nobody in my family ever even considered the possibility that God doesn't exist or that Christianity isn't the truth. That sort of early indoctrination is incredibly hard to overcome, and it pervades our lives. Growing up, how many of us ever even questioned the treatment by our respective educational systems of Judeo-Christian doctrine as religion and other belief systems as mythology? By the way, writing this talk has helped me realize the continuing efforts to keep Christian indoctrination at bay in New Zealand's public schools in which our own David Hines is a major player, are really important. My nephew Billy, that's Dr. William Green to the rest of the world, posted something really insightful on Facebook just the other day, and it sums up my struggle well. So I'm going to quote portions of his post. I used to believe some pretty crazy things. I was a conservative Christian for about 25 years, and for quite a while I believed the earth was 5,000 years old. In order to believe that, you have to ignore a hell of a lot of evidence. And you have to do a lot of mental gymnastics. And you have to distrust a hell of a lot of very smart people who do not deserve your distrust. It's scary to really look for truth because it's scary to be wrong. It means you might lose something, and you might, but you'll gain so much more. You'll gain a special freedom that comes only to those willing to admit they were wrong, even if they were wrong for a lifetime. It's a special freedom that only comes to those who value truth over security. I'm not perfect in this, but it's something I aspire to. My favorite quote from Carl Sagan sums it up. For me, it is far better to grasp the universe as it really is than to persist in delusion, however satisfying and reassuring. It's only in the last few years that I've come to accept my own non-belief as valid. That struggle was as difficult as it was, at least in part, because of how scary it is to admit I was wrong for a lifetime, as Billy said. I can only imagine how hard it was for him, having been a true believer for more than half his life. Becoming a part of this fellowship, where non-believers and believers of all stripes are equally welcome and valued, has helped me on that journey. As part of my research for this talk, I found a few writings by James A. Hout, who's been an atheist UU since the 1950s. In a 2019 piece, Unitarians are mostly skeptics, he wrote, America's largest assemblage of agnostic, atheist, skeptic, freethinker, godless, doubter, disbelievers may be within the Unitarian Universalist Association. UU is a tiny fringe with only 150,000 adult members, but they stand tall in science and intellectual circles. As a guess, I estimate that perhaps 140,000 of them, out of 150,000, doubt invisible gods, devils, heavens, hells, angels, demons, and other magical entities alleged by standard churches. The humanist cohort of doubters evidently was drawn to UU because of its historic tradition as a sanctuary for thinkers who cannot swallow supernaturalism, a heritage encompassing many of the best minds throughout history. In the past, Unitarians led efforts to create humanist organizations and write humanist manifestos. Today, UU skeptics like me sometimes feel frustrated because our organization seems hesitant to fully acknowledge its disbelievers. It dances around timidly, mostly avoiding the elephant in the room. So it seems the UU denomination, as a global organization, still has some way to go toward fully embracing the skeptics and atheists comprising a plurality of its membership. I can live with that, as long as I feel welcome in my local fellowship, and I certainly do. But I'm still uncomfortable thinking of myself as an atheist. Skeptic? Sure. Non-believer? You bet. But taking on the label atheist still feels a road too far. I'm also not, and don't expect I'll ever become, an anti-theist like Richard Dawkins, one who looks down on those who have faith in the God of their understanding. I recognize that religious faith can bring meaning and peace to people's lives if those beliefs work for them, and I'm totally fine with that. On the other hand, intolerance of others, whether born of religion or anything else, has no place in the real world. That takes me back to what I eventually realized is the real point of my remarks: tolerance. On this point, and in closing, there's a moment in South Park, of all things, that really stuck with me. In the All About Mormons episode in season 7, an LDS family moves to South Park, and their son Gary joins the boys' class. If I'm remembering correctly, the boys are in 3rd grade, so they're around 8 years old. During the episode, Stan and his family are initially intrigued by how happy Gary's family is together and want to know how they can have that too. But then Gary's family tells one of those fantastical stories about the church's origins, which doesn't withstand even minor scrutiny. Stan is incredulous and calls them all idiots for believing it. The next morning, Gary confronts Stan, saying, "Look, maybe us Mormons do believe in crazy stories that make absolutely no sense, and maybe Joseph Smith did make it all up, but I have a great life and a great family, and I have the Book of Mormon to thank for that. The truth is, I don't care if Joseph Smith made it all up, because what the church teaches now is loving your family, being nice, and helping people. And even though people in this town might think that's stupid, I still choose to believe in it. All I ever did was try to be your friend, Stan. But you're so high and mighty you couldn't look past my religion and just be my friend back. You've got a lot of growing up to do, buddy." Yes, Gary. Yes, we do. Yeah. So as we finally come to the end of our service, please stand, if able, and join in singing our closing hymn, number 128. Please join me in the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. After we close this morning, I ask those who are here in person to stick around, form into small groups, and discuss your thoughts on today's discussion questions. Our questions today are: what are the truths that matter most to you now? How have they evolved as you've lived and learned? My closing words today are by Cynthia Landrum. We leave this gathered community, but we don't leave our connection. Our concerns, our care for each other, our service to each other, to the world, and to our faith continues. Until we are together again, friends, be strong, be well, be true, be loving.